December 7th, 1941, a date that changed the course of world history. On a quiet Sunday morning, the Japanese Empire launched a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, bringing the United States into World War II. The attack was supposed to be a devastating blow. Japan believed they had delivered a message to America, stay out of our way. But what happened next became one of the biggest strategic mistakes in military history. Because Japan did not just attack a country. They weakened an industrial giant, a nation that many Japanese leaders believed was weak, divided, and unwilling to fight. They thought Americans were too comfortable, too distracted, too far away from the battlefield. They believed America would negotiate after suffering a major defeat. But they misunderstood one thing, the American response. Within months, the same nation Japan underestimated would transform itself into the most powerful military-industrial force the world had ever seen. So how did Japan miscalculate America so badly? Why did Japanese leaders believe they could defeat a country with more resources, more manpower, and greater industrial power? And how did that mistake lead to Japan's ultimate defeat? This is the story of why Japan underestimated America in World War II. Part 1. The dangerous assumption about America before the war. Japanese military leaders studied America carefully. They knew America was wealthy. They knew America had a massive population. They knew America had huge factories. But they believed those advantages would not matter. Why? Because Japan viewed war through a completely different mindset. The Japanese military was heavily influenced by ideas of honor, sacrifice, and the warrior tradition. Many Japanese officers admired the spirit of the ancient samurai. They believed a smaller force with stronger determination could defeat a larger enemy. This belief had helped Japan achieve victories before. In the early 20th century, Japan shocked the world by defeating powerful opponents. In the Russo-Japanese War of 1904-1905, Japan defeated Russia, becoming the first Asian nation in modern history to defeat a major European power. That victory created confidence. Japan began believing that courage and discipline could overcome size and resources. But America was different. The United States was not Russia, and Japan failed to understand the scale of American power. Part 2. Japan's view of America. Many Japanese leaders believed Americans lacked the willingness to fight a long war. They saw America as a nation focused on business, entertainment, and personal comfort. They believed American citizens would lose their motivation after suffering casualties. Japanese Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto was one of the few leaders who understood America better. He had studied in the United States and knew the power of American industry. He warned Japanese leaders, "You cannot invade the mainland United States. There would be a rifle behind every blade of grass." Yamamoto understood something important. Japan could win battles, but defeating America in a long war would be almost impossible. However, the Japanese government believed a quick victory was possible. Their plan was simple: destroy the American Pacific Fleet, shop America, create enough damage that the United States would negotiate. They were dating everything on one assumption, that Americans would not have the determination to continue fighting. They were completely wrong. Part 3. Pearl Harbor, the attack that backfired on December 7th, 1941. Hundreds of Japanese aircraft attacked Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. The attack was highly successful. American battleships were destroyed. Thousands of Americans were killed or wounded. The Japanese military celebrated. Many believed they had achieved a historic victory, but strategically Pearl Harbor created the opposite effect. The attack united America. Before Pearl Harbor, many Americans wanted to avoid another European war. But after the attack, public opinion changed overnight. The phrase became famous: "Remember Pearl Harbor." Instead of breaking American morale, Japan created a powerful motivation for revenge. The United States entered the war with one clear goal: victory. Part 4. The industrial giant awakens. Japan made another major mistake. They underestimated American production. At the beginning of the war, Japan had experienced pilots, powerful ships, and a strong navy. But America had something even more powerful: factories. The United States had the ability to produce weapons on a scale Japan could never match. American factories began producing thousands of aircraft, hundreds of warships, millions of weapons, millions of tons of supplies. The entire American economy shifted toward war production. Companies that once built cars started building tanks and aircraft. Workers who had never been involved in military production became part of the biggest industrial mobilization in history. Japan was fighting a country that could replace losses faster than Japan could create them, and that became the turning point. Part 5. The difference between American and Japanese strategy. Japan believed in quality. America believed in quantity. Japanese military planners focused on creating elite forces. They invested heavily in highly trained pilots and advanced equipment. development. America focused on mass production. A destroyed American ship could be replaced. A lost Japanese aircraft carrier could take years to rebuild. A lost Japanese pilot with years of experience was almost impossible to replace. This difference became clear during the Battle of Midway in 1942. Just 6 months after Pearl Harbor, the United States dealt Japan one of its biggest defeats. American forces sank 4 Japanese aircraft carriers. Japan lost many experienced pilots. The balance of power in the Pacific began to change. The country that expected a quick victory was now fighting a war of survival. Part 6. The battle that changed everything. Guadalcanal. After the defeat at Midway, Japan was no longer in complete control of the Pacific. The Japanese leaders still believed they could stop America. Their next major challenge came at a small island called Guadalcanal. In August 1942, American Marines landed on the island to stop Japan from building a major airfield there. The battle became one of the first major American offensives against Japan. At first, Japanese forces underestimated the Americans again. They believed American soldiers were inexperienced and would not perform well against Japan's battle-hardened troops. But once again, the assumption was wrong. The American military adapted quickly. The Marines fought through extreme conditions, disease, hunger, and constant attacks. The battle became a brutal test of endurance. Japan had elite soldiers, but America had something Japan could not match, a nearly endless supply of replacements. When Japanese units suffered heavy losses, replacing those experienced soldiers was extremely difficult. When American units suffered losses, more troops were arriving. The war became a battle of resources. And in that type of war, Japan was fighting a losing battle. Part 7. Japan misunderstood American determination. One of Japan's biggest mistakes was misunderstanding the American mindset. Japanese leaders believed that a shocking attack would make America afraid. Instead, it created anger and determination. Across the United States, millions of people joined the military. Factories worked day and night. Families accepted sacrifices. People bought war bonds. The entire country became focused on defeating Japan and Germany. Japan expected Americans to lose interest. Instead, America became more committed than ever. This was a mistake Japan repeated throughout the war. They underestimated how much damage Americans were willing to accept in order to win. Part 8. The power of American industry. The biggest difference between the two nations was production. Japan was an island nation with limited natural resources. It lacked many important materials needed for a long industrial war. The United States had massive resources: oil, steel, factories, a huge workforce, and transportation networks capable of supplying armies thousands of miles away. American production numbers became almost unbelievable. The United States produced aircraft faster than Japan could destroy them. It built ships faster than Japan could sink them. It created a military machine that continued growing every year. A famous example was the Liberty Ship program. These cargo ships were built rapidly to transport supplies across oceans. America was not just fighting battles. It was creating an entire system designed to defeat its enemies. Japan had planned for a short war. America prepared for a long one. Part 9. The myth of Japanese superiority before the war. Many Japanese military leaders believed their soldiers were superior. They believed discipline, courage, and loyalty would overcome American advantages. In some battles, Japanese forces showed incredible determination. Many Japanese soldiers fought until the end, refusing to surrender. But courage alone could not replace resources. Modern warfare was not only about bravery, it was about technology, supply lines, industrial capacity, intelligence, communication, and production. America understood this. Japan did not adapt quickly enough. Part 10. The submarine war. Japan's hidden weakness. Another major factor in Japan's defeat was the American submarine campaign. American submarines attacked Japanese supply ships across the Pacific. Japan depended heavily on imported resources, especially oil. Without fuel, ships could not move. Without supplies, armies could not fight. The American submarine campaign slowly strangled Japan's ability to continue the war. Japanese leaders had expected their navy to dominate the Pacific. Instead, their supply network was being destroyed. An empire built on expansion was slowly being cut off. Part 11. Japan's biggest strategic error. Fighting a long war. The greatest mistake Japan made was starting a war it could not sustain. Japanese leaders knew America was powerful, but they believed they could force America to surrender quickly. They planned a knockout punch, but they failed to finish the fight. After Pearl Harbor, Japan had damaged the American fleet, but they failed to destroy important targets, fuel storage facilities, repair facilities, submarine bases, aircraft production. The attack created anger that did not eliminate American power. Instead, Japan gave America time to respond, and time was exactly what Japan could not afford. Part 12. America's learning curve. At the beginning of World War II, America was not the strongest military power, but the country had to rapidly rebuild and modernize. But one advantage America had was adaptation. The U.S. military learned from mistakes. New strategies were developed. Better aircraft were created. New weapons were introduced. Military leaders improved their tactics. The United States transformed itself from a nation entering war into the most powerful military force on Earth. Japan had underestimated how quickly America could adapt. Part 13. The final push toward Japan. By 1944 and 1945, American forces were moving closer to Japan. The island hopping strategy allowed America to capture important positions across the Pacific. Places like the Philippines, Iwo and Okinawa became major battles. The fighting was extremely brutal. Japanese forces defended every island fiercely, but the outcome was becoming clear. America had control of the skies and seas. Japan was running out of resources. Its cities were being bombed. Its military was weakening. The mistake made in 1941 had become impossible to reverse. Part 14. The atomic bomb and Japan's surrender. In August 1945, the United States dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The destruction was massive. Shortly after, Japan announced its surrender. World War II ended. Japan's dream of expanding its empire was over. The nation that believed America would quit had been defeated by the very determination it underestimated. Conclusion. The lesson of Japan's mistake. Japan did not lose World War II because its soldiers lacked courage. They fought with incredible determination. Japan lost because its leaders misunderstood the kind of war they were entering. They underestimated America's industrial power, America's ability to adapt, America's willingness to fight, and most importantly, America's response to being attacked. Pearl Harbor was designed to weaken America, and instead, it united the country. Japan expected a short conflict. America prepared for total victory. The lesson from history is clear. Never underestimate an opponent based only on what you see at the beginning. Because sometimes the nation that looks unprepared is the nation that becomes unstoppable. History is filled with moments where one decision changed everything. Japan believed America would break, but they underestimated a nation that was ready to fight until the end. If you enjoyed this documentary, don't forget to subscribe and join us for more stories from history that the world still remembers. Thanks for watching.